In this video, we're going to be putting together a multiplicity collage where you're combining multiple pictures and clones of the same object repeated in the composition. The key with this is to make sure when you're taking your pictures that that background is not moving, and that's going to make these edits a lot better when you go to put them together. But to get started with the multiplicity idea, you're going to go to File, Scripts, and then Load Files into Stack. And I'm going to hit Browse and find where the pictures are saved. At in the folder, you're going to hold down Command and select all of the images that you're going to be working with for your multiplicity collage. And then once you have them all selected, you're going to hit Open. And then the most important step here is to make sure you check the box that says Attempt to automatically align source images. If you do not check this box, some of the background images that might have slightly moved when you took your picture are going to be out of place. But I'm going to hit OK. And then it's going to take a minute, but it will load all of the pictures into the same image. So with the bottom right corner here in the Layers panel, you should be able to see multiple photos there. When it loads your pictures into the document here in Photoshop, you might notice this checkerboard background that shows up. This shows up when your camera moves. Even if it moves slightly, sometimes you'll still get that checkerboard background. But since you check the button to align source images, it's taking the hand and the background and trying to line everything up so that as we hide these, the only thing that's moving should be the flower or whatever object you are cloning. So if you have too much of that checkerboard in the background, that means your camera moved too much and you're going to need to retake your pictures. To get started with this though, I'm going to crop that checkerboard out of the background so I don't have to worry about those distractions in the background as I'm editing everything. And then I'm going to, on my first layer, add a mask to it. So to add a mask to my first layer, I'm going to click in the bottom right-hand corner, this square with the circle on it, and it adds a mask on the image. And with this mask, I'm going to mask off the part of the photo that I want to be cloned. Instead of using the eraser tool to mask the flower out of the image, I'm going to use the Paintbrush tool on this mask because the nice thing with the Paintbrush tool is that you're able to undo or go back and fix things if you don't like it. So right now I'm masking off the flower and it's showing the next picture underneath it. So I have that flower cut out. If though you mess up, you can switch your color to white and you can bring that image back. So again, it's better than using the eraser tool because it's non-destructive editing where you can go back and fix something within the composition. But once I have that one area masked off, I'm going to hit Command-I, and that's going to flip what I have masked. So now instead of having the flower erased in the picture, I have the entire background erased with just the flower brought back into the composition. So what I'm going to do is hide that top layer so that way it doesn't get confusing as you have more and more clones added. I'm going to click on my second layer and do the same thing. So I'm going to add a mask, mask off the flower, and if you have any shadows or anything else on the outside, that's important to mask off as well. So get rid of any shadows. That way when you hit Command-I and bring it back, you still have part of that shadow underneath the flower or underneath your figure there. So now if I bring my first layer back, I have the 3 flowers on the composition. So I'm going to go through and do that same thing for all of them. So I'm going to keep hiding my top layers, clicking on my next layer, adding the mask, masking it off, and then hitting Command-I. So go ahead through and fill in and bring back all of your clones, and then we're going to look at how to deal with any overlap that you might run into. Here's my image with all of the layers and clones brought back into the composition. You'll notice that there's some spots where the flower is a little bit see-through, where 2 or more of the flowers overlap. So that's important to go back and touch up some of those areas where there is overlap. If you find that two flowers or two of your clones are completely overlapping each other, that's where I would just delete one of the clones so that you only have the one in that specific spot in the picture. But to get started adjusting things, I'm going to start hiding my layers to find where the issues are at. So this first flower is fine where it's at. There's nothing that is overlapping it. Check my next layer, that one's fine. This one is where there's a little bit of overlap. So as I hide this third layer, you can see the flower underneath is completely clear now. So I'm going to zoom in. And I'm going to click on the mask, so make sure the mask and not the picture is selected. And then I'm going to take my paintbrush set to black, and I'm just going to paint right around the outside of that flower to bring parts of it back. So remember, you can switch between the white and the black. The white is going to get rid of what's underneath there, and the black is going to bring that part of the flower back. So some images are going to be trickier than others, where you really have to take your time along some of those edges and use a really small brush. You might have to zoom in. Some areas might have something like this, where the shadow creates this harsh edge. What I would do if you have anywhere like that where the value is a little bit darker and kind of has that harsh edge, is to find a feathered brush. So one with kind of an edge that's not that harsh edge. Lower your opacity to around 50% and just try to fade that into the shadow there, so you can kind of get rid of that harsh line and it looks a little bit more natural as a shadow that's faded in there. And I can lower that opacity even more to kind of bring that edge back in a little bit. So that flower is taken care of, so now I can find another flower that might be overlapping too much. And this one kind of gets cut off and is almost in the same spot off to the side here. So I'm just going to hide that layer and get rid of that one. That flower is fine. That one's good. This one is covering up a little bit in the background, so if I zoom in and I hide that layer, you can see part of that flower is getting hidden by it. So I'm going to click on my next layer and just paint right over it with my opacity back up. Paint right over it to bring it back. So take your time, go through each layer, make sure that everything is refined so that you don't have any of those areas of overlap. So my last spot would be these two flowers here, where I would hide those layers and go back to adjust it.